Well, good evening, and thank you for this privilege. I'm quite delighted to be here this evening. And generally, as it happens, when I take this transatlantic flight between 4 and 6, my brain is working a bit slower. The translation device in there, as some of you are aware, English is my 5th language, so it takes a little bit of time to make the transition. But I'm delighted to be here and to speak to you, share some thoughts on some very pertinent topics and some subjects that I believe are very important to us, regardless of our background, nationalities, religious affiliations, and so on. And primarily to speak on the interrelationship between ethics, religion, and society, and how we can envision, as we move forward through current times, to a more sort of comprehensive education for the current generation and also for the future generations. As most of you are probably aware, I mean, much of our understanding of ethics is formulated or was formulated. Moving to the higher chair, see? Already, you see. And 15 minutes later, I'll have a throne, and then I'll have a ladder for crying out. I don't think many of your speakers have the privilege to speak from a higher chair. So as I was saying, that much of our understanding of ethics, or what ethics is, was formulated by certain religious traditions of the past. And of course, then there were humanists who tried to secularize much of ethical realms. And by ethics, I have a different view. By ethics, I do not mean simply moral codes or moral conducts, as I'll explain a bit later. Meaning there are two ways of looking at ethics. One way is to look at it as a restraining force. That is what most of the current society looks at ethics as something that restrains us from doing something that are not very helpful or not very useful. But I also look at ethics, being informed from the Buddhist tradition, as a method of optimization, meaning that we already have certain virtuous qualities in us, and ethics is something that allows us to optimize these virtuous qualities, meaning every human being possesses a certain level of compassion or kindness or empathy, something that is natural or biological to us. But by virtue of certain kinds of trainings or adhering to certain kind of training, one can optimize this kindness to a level of greater kindness or greater compassion. So that is what I mean by the process of optimization. So there were several myths about ethics and virtue in every society. For example, one of the founding figures of Western philosophy, Aristotle, believed that virtue was genetics. You know, that if you came from a good family, then chances are that the offsprings will be good. So virtue was something that was transferred from parents to kids, and then so on. And I think he probably did realize before his death that he was completely off on that. And today we can see, of course, plenty of examples that doesn't suggest that virtue has anything to do with the kind of family we belong to, or the kind of genes that we possess. And we have, you know, I mean, we are still, as we are fathoming the human genome structure. I mean, there are a lot of claims that were made in the beginning of the project, and me being in the hub in Cambridge between Harvard and MIT, where much of this research was being done. And it was amusing to me after years of research when, you know, they were hoping that, you know, they will find something significant about the human gene structure, the number of genes that makes us a superior species. And then they realized that the humans, the difference between humans and worms is about 1,000 genes. Not much, actually. So ethics or virtue has, of course, a long-standing tradition in any civil society or civilized society. And currently, there are a lot of conversations around it happening, and largely because of the collapse of the financial system that we so dearly love and that we so dearly cultivated. And there are plenty of reasons given, plenty of mathematical equations presented, complex systems, because, of course, many of these Wall Street people who were doing probability analysis were quantum physicists by training, a lot of them. And today, all these equations, all these explanations don't seem actually, they seem very redundant to what was expected of this financial market. And if you summarize as to what led to the downfall, what led to the financial meltdown, it points back to one age-old flaw in the human species: greed. So when you look at something like greed, then it suggests something that perhaps in the last 2,500 or 3,000 years of documented human history, we haven't actually evolved that much. Meaning that we haven't been able to train or transform some of the basic flaws in human design. Not necessarily to argue that those are not what makes us human as well, but this is, again, the method of optimization, that having become aware of our own flaws, having become aware of certain what we now refer to as afflictive mindsets or afflictive emotions, namely anger, jealousy, greed, all that good stuff that we crave for, that somehow in the long term these are not very fruitful things. These are not things that are conducive to a happy life or a fulfilling life or a meaningful life. That in some ways we have to counter these, what we so easily designate as natural tendencies of humankind. Do you hear the music? Okay.
No.
I was just about to ask, I don't know what kind of tea they gave me. Okay. So, ethics, I think, is something that we need to, of course, as a society, need to reflect more deeply on. And it doesn't have to be just from the point of view of a restraining thing. A lot of times the popular conversation in ethics happens is, what does a person or a group thinks about stem cell research or something along those lines. And so, of course, the scientist, my scientist friends, they are divided in the idea that they don't even want to touch ethics from a 10-foot pole, because they believe that adhering to any kind of ethical code or trying to even entertain ethical arguments might actually hinder the human advancement of science. Okay. So that is the way popular religious traditions had proposed ethical regulations. And you see that become quite prominent when, even around elections, when debates are happening. And surprisingly, in this country, where you have a bipartisan system and you get only black and white shades, or at least you try to get black and white shades. You see, I grew up in a country like India with 600 political parties, one of the largest democracies in the world, if not the largest. And so things are not always about black and white, meaning you do pay attention to the gray area. And similarly, ethics is not merely about good and bad. It's not merely about positive and negative. But it has to do with, you see, also much of the gray area and how far can we get away from the negativities of human mindset, from the negative direction that human mind is tempted towards.